Welcome to the Millionaire Next Door podcast with Robert Curtis, CFP accredited investment fiduciary from Signature Estate and Investment Advisors. In this podcast, we help successful wealth accumulators like you looking to transition to a work-optional lifestyle by helping you build strategies for growing and maintaining your wealth. Robert draws from years of experience and fiduciary responsibility and interviews guest experts to help you build reliable strategies to grow and maintain your wealth. Now, on to the show.
Great. Well, good day, everyone, and welcome back to the Millionaire Next Door podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Today, I have a guest, definitely excited to be sharing on the program with you. His name is Tyson Ray. He's from Form Wealth Advisors. He's actually another financial advisor, and I'll let him tell his story when I introduce him. But we come from a similar background. I did a podcast several weeks back with my coach at Pareto Systems. We've both been through that process, and so we share that. And my overall sense is that Tyson is a consummate professional, and like myself, he's always working on himself, improving his team and his process and his professionalism. And it's kind of just an ongoing, continuous effort. So with that, I'd like to welcome Tyson Ray from Form Wealth Advisors. Welcome, Tyson.
Thank you for having me on, Robert.
Yeah, 100%. We're really excited. And I'm just really excited to be able to collaborate with another professional and share some thoughts. And, rather than competition, I sort of think of if you had these two doctors at a pretty little level in different parts of the country, it'd be great if they just compared notes and collaborated. So that's a little bit of the vision I had today. You also have a new book, so we want to talk about that. You've given it a lot of thought. Well, why don't you open up and share a little bit about your story, your process, your approach? Introduce yourself. Tell us who you are.
Yeah. Well, first, again, thank you for having me on. I love the name of the podcast and the reality that there's just a lot of people that have spent a lot of time trying to accumulate a lot of money. And then at certain thresholds, and $1 million is definitely one of them, they start seeking advice. And unfortunately, as you're aware in this industry, passing licensing to become a financial advisor doesn't make you a good financial advisor any more than getting, passing to get your driver's license doesn't necessarily make you a good driver. And I wrote this book. It's my second attempt at trying to basically help financial advisors kind of see the light that the Pareto coaching gives us, some of the processes and things that you're doing for your own clients, because a lot of advisors are out there and they're provided with just tools that show performance reports looking backwards as their value add is somehow, this is how I've done with the portfolio, when most clients are looking forward and trying to understand what do they need to do with their money. And the best part of what we've learned in this business and what Pareto teaches and the coaching they provide and others out there is it's really about building a relationship that takes into consideration everything. And that's why we named the book The Total Relationship. And so the point is to try and help clients that aren't our clients have a different expectation of their advisors with the hope of trying to change this financial industry away from the product focus and the money focus to the people focus.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been doing this over 25 years with second and third generation clients. So I've seen that. And there was a big emphasis on that. And there still is, or sometimes I get in discussions, but there's so much more going on. I think, for example, to really bring it home, what if we just, we set up, we grew their wealth, we kept growing it, but the estate plan was set out all wrong and it didn't do what their wishes were, but yet we drove it bigger and bigger, but it was unsuccessful in achieving what they want. That would be a total disaster. So it's to focus on those other nuance, what's really important, living, their bucket list, et cetera. But it takes a long time, and there's such a bias in the industry pushing us towards those numbers or an expectation from certain clients that you'll deliver, or that you'll deliver this much performance above certain benchmarks. But what is that all for? We dive deeper and say, why is that? Is that important? What are your, it's your life. This is not an index that's arbitrarily created. what does that have to do with your hopes, your goals, your aspirations, your family, your health, all your wishes? So I think we're on 100%, but it takes time to delve down and to reset expectations, because a lot of stuff's been that's the story that's been woven, or the expectation.
Well, and I think too many advisors are waiting for the client to reach out and then they just respond to whatever the request is, instead of having a relationship with the client to try and help prepare for what's coming. And to your point, I think your conversation about just building wealth, or your comment about just building wealth and the estate at the end, took me back to a client that I had early in my career, was at the end of her life. And it was one of those scenarios where there wasn't a lot left to do, and I was assigned to go have the review. And what I remember most about going and seeing this client is she was so conservative that she wouldn't open up a soda if she wasn't able to share it with somebody, because at her age, she couldn't finish the whole thing. And I would go meet with her, and it was kind of like the book Tuesdays with Maury. This was my kind of version of this, that I'd go and meet with this woman. And depending on the time I was meeting with her, she would either reflect back on the things in her life, and she didn't have kids and her husband had passed years before, but she would reflect back in her life and she would share the things that she was happy about, or the memories she would have. And then I'd show up at a different meeting, and it'd be an entirely different paradigm. And she would tell me the things she wished she would have done. And what I gleaned from that is she had this multi-million-dollar portfolio, and somewhere along the way, she didn't have someone that was there to encourage her to go do some of those things, because almost all of those things had a financial component to it. And that's where I started realizing, wait, the job is not so much focusing just on the money. It's focusing on, what do you want to do with this money? And sometimes it's spending it or taking it out. And what I found in the same 25 years I've been doing this, like you, is I spend more of my time trying to convince the client to go and enjoy that which way they have. Most people that I find that have money have been savers, and that's how they built the wealth. But this mindset of shifting into retirement, and now I'm going to try and live off of this, all of a sudden they want to keep saving. And it's just like, no, that I say a lot that for the clients that we work with, that you've saved for later, and later is now in retirement. And so now what are we going to do with some of this excess or profits or incomes or different things? Because just to build it, you're going to sit here in 20 or 30 years and be that client that I experienced early in my career that's now going to have regrets, because now you can't do it. And she had said to me, and it's in the book, that, this money to her became what she called black ink on white paper, because it no longer had a meaning or a purpose that she was going to enjoy and take in. And again, the reviews that financial advisors are being taught to have, or gosh, the millions and millions and millions of dollars are being spent on technology so we can have a performance report that has a pretty pie chart and colors, and we can go back in time and show how we compared to what, isn't the job. The job is to try and figure out in the next 6 to 12 months, what do you want to do if you can? And can you? And can we fund it? And where can that come from? And to try and equip these advisors to have a different conversation with their client, and try and help the client realize what they really need from an advisor, as to how to live a better life with what they have.
100%. Yeah. I say we liberate them to live their lives, and sort of check these bucket list items off. And as time goes by, in any given week, I get interactions, or I've got a client, just all these vacations there at the French Open, and, watching tennis, because that's been a bucket list item. Or I got a guy who did a major swim at age 60 over in Spain across some strait in Gibraltar. That's it's pretty intense thing to do, but that was his bucket list. Or a woman who just visited Patagonia, and I'd see her Facebook posts, and and even I explained on I had a call, my assistant took it, where a client with not huge resources, she's had hip surgeries, knee surgeries, deep into her 80s, lost her husband, but she wanted to liquidate a certain amount, pretty good amount, 40 grand. She was traveling to Hungary and Turkey, and with her, and I thought, my goodness, this is great. I mean, you're literally pulling money out of the portfolio, but you're living your life. You're doing these things. You're mobile. You're in your mid 80s. Go enjoy that. Whatever that is, whatever that means. And there's other folks we see quite a bit on the healthcare side, where all of a sudden now there's some large distributions coming out to a healthcare provider, and that's how that money will be spent, unfortunately. So I get a lot of joy out of that, and just sort of encouraging them that they can do that now because they've been in that saver mindset, and that's why they're in that position. And maybe they want to shower their kids or grandkids with some gifts, go for it.
Yeah, you're reminding me of the client that I met with before the financial crisis, and they had a very content life, and they had this excess in the portfolios. And I was just like, what would you want to do if you could? And all of a sudden, out of the blue, they were like, we want to take a 3-week vacation to Egypt to see the pyramids. And I was like, well, okay, like, let's talk about like, what is that going to like high level? What do you think that's going to cost? And all of a sudden she spit out, $30,000. And I'm like, okay, well, let's take some of the profits that we had in 2007 and set it aside in the bank. And now you can plan your trip. And they did. And they started planning for it. We talked about it. It was exciting. About a month before they left on this trip, the brother of this couple, her brother, called me and said, hey, I need 30 grand from my account to go on a trip. And by this time, the markets had corrected. And it's like, well, wait a second, you didn't tell me. And all of a sudden I started realizing our job is to get in front of what is it that you want to do so we can try and prepare where those resources are, because the market gives and takes away. And I think too many financial advisors are out there just cutting checks for people when they call out of the blue at the random, or appeasing the client at the moment in time, that if they would just ask a few more proactive, forward looking, if they cared enough about that relationship to look and get off the performance report and look into the future of what the client's needs, they can add so much more value and protect the client from themselves so much more. And it's a privilege to do. And in between that vacation example or another example where early in my career, someone came to me, they had gotten an inheritance and basically said, here, we want to set this $100,000 aside for my retirement. And we're going to get these long-term investments. And again, this is some 20 some years ago, and we set it aside. And about a year and a half later, I get a phone call on a Monday morning. They need 80 grand because they bought a car. And it's like, wait a second. I thought this was, and I realized I didn't ask them when, I didn't go through. It's almost what I found is our job as financial advisors is to help the client realize all the reasons why they shouldn't make that long-term investment because they have a short-term need. Because if we make those short-term investments or take those short-term dollars and put them in a long-term investment, we don't control, no one controls what the markets are going to do in the short term. And part of having that total relationship is going through that process of just understanding all that. And too many advisors, in my opinion, are too busy taking in that money, giving the client what they want, and realizing that's not what they needed later on, which is a permanent regret and often can damage the client's financial situation.
That's a super good point. And for any clients I have that are listening, anytime you can let me know something's coming up. I'm thinking about this. This is, let's try and prepare for that. And we can use the markets when things are toppy, like it was this summer. We were sort of like, hey, we're on a bull market, but I don't exactly get it because I don't think we solved anything here. And sure enough, they've pulled back. But when we can, that is really desirable to free that up. There's other times too, and I'm sure you see it a lot. We do get calls, things they didn't plan on, things change, funds are just needed, they got a bill, they got this, and then we just need to free it up. And then I do try and be kind and do it as productively. I have a process that's named Our Process, objective, unemotional, rules-based. We go through that, and sometimes they're really pained that they have to pull these things from their portfolio. They feel, but I'm like, look, this is life. Things come up. You have to take care of things. So and I let them know it's literally every day of the week. It's not ideal, but if they can let us know ahead of time, we can probably time that a little bit better. And we enjoy it's their money, those resources available. But to anybody who kind of has an emergency and they need to pull, most of them have saved a good amount outside and they deal with that. But sometimes they have to reach back into this. So, it comes up a lot. And then we have a very formal process we go through in determining how we would actually do that and what's the most productive and maybe what's changed in the market where maybe you ought to lighten up here and stick along that too. But let's free this up because, this is all for you to live your life. We never forget that. So, yeah.
And the biggest point there that we can't, both of us can't communicate enough to our clients and want to encourage those that aren't clients to be, you got to over communicate. You start, and I don't know where I came up with the dollar amount, and I think the dollar amount doesn't really matter, but what we try and say to people is, hey, when most people don't spend over $5,000 without thinking about it for a while, right? Mm-hmm. And when you start thinking, we just say this all the time, when you start thinking you're going to spend whatever that is and it's over 5,000, let us know. Even if you're going to take it out of your bank account, because what happens is you take enough money out of your bank account, eventually you give us the phone call, because the lower those bank balances go, the higher your anxiety goes to the reactions of the market that are bouncing around. And the behavioral finance that's out there says that if you attach a dollar amount, so if your portfolio fluctuates, if you have $1 million next door, you have your portfolio $1 million, $1 million goes down by 100 grand. If you go and attach that temporary loss to something you need, like a car. Mm-hmm. So you would call your emotions, your brain says, I just lost my car in the markets. And behavioral finance says the tendency is then you go buy the car, which is another hit to the portfolio.
Right.
Because somehow you're like, well, I can't do it again. So I better go get that money because I got to go get that car. And the whole point of the total relationship, or the whole point of over communicating your needs in advance, will allow your advisor to prepare you for the money set aside for the car. We want to set aside whatever it is you need into the future, so that when the markets are fluctuating, they're just fluctuating. And you're not emotionally attaching it to a specific need you have or a want you have into the future. And again, I think way too many advisors are spending their time investing money and not having any of these conversations. And that's why the coaching at Pareto has helped us. That's why I wanted to jump on your podcast here, because it's like, hey, this is like a ministry. This is like we feel like we're prophets, and you're on one side of the country, I'm on the other side of the country. Let's just get the word out that, hey, you got to talk to us. You got to let us know, because when you're sitting at your kitchen table deciding what you're going to take for the trip for next year, let us know, right? Because all these things become a financial expense at some point, and we want to understand where that's coming from, even if it's just coming from the bank account, because we may need to replenish that bank account.
100%. Yeah. I mean, that's why we schedule regular calls, interactions, strategy and tactical meetings, but it's not just a rehash. It's not a rehash of what happened last quarter. It's very future pacing. Where are we going? We would love to get into these aspirational qualities. There's something, you're called Form Wealth Advisors. That's, I know where that comes from. Yep. Family, occupation, recreation. So we really try and foster those discussions. But the better we know folks, the better. I'm dealing with someone right now who's asked me to do a full financial plan. They're making very good money, very successful, medium-sized portfolio, but they freely admit they are just spenders. They're spending like crazy. They don't want to do a budget there. So they want to kind of delve into that. And so we're starting to, freely. I told them flat out, I hate doing budgets, even on my own household. I hate having a little line item for everything. And, I want to live a little bit more aspirationally, but we're going to delve into that with them and drive through a lot of those questions in the process. So I think there's a lot of value to that. Otherwise, you're just always trying to beat some number, run, get some score. It's not very satisfying, as opposed to living life. And, maybe they gift off money to a kid or a grandkid or things like that. It's just really, really rewarding. And I sense you're right in the same place. Yeah.
Yeah, I think most people, I find our role becomes much more about the permission business than the investment business. Giving people permission. And some people, you can spend a lot as long as you're making sure you're saving a lot along the way. And that's where financial planning can come in handy. It can kind of remove the fear, the regret, that, or not allowing, some people have this buyer's remorse, if you will. It's like, hey, if you're setting aside what you need for your future, then you don't have to have that regret or remorse. But a financial advisor can help you with that. If that financial advisor is, again, focused on the planning or focused on the better life. And again, I think if we go back in history, my belief is that the financial industry is losing so slowly, they still think they're winning. And it has to do with product or somehow the differentiation of one investment to the other. And yet long-term averages are going to come out to their averages. And it's not so much the focus on here, I'm going to invest the money better than you or better than the other advisor, as much as no, how do we help you steward better what you have, both in spending it and saving it for later. And the industry, 25 years ago when I started, I had to go check myself into a hotel for literally a month, and I got quote unquote sales training. We were taught to sell. It was all about peddling product. And it was about, back in the day, that it was easy 25 years ago, because the only place you could find out what an investment was doing is if you called a stock broker. And that's evolved, but I don't think the firm's training departments have evolved all that much. I don't think enough clients are being exposed to real financial planning, or to an advisor like you and I who really care about, hey, enjoy this. That's what it's for. And yet at the same time, don't enjoy it so much, because then you're going to regret not being able to retire or not being able to have in the future what you need. But I think the greatest regret a lot of these savers have, a lot of your Millionaire Next Doors have, is they don't realize, hey, you can be done. They keep working, or they keep saving and sacrificing, and in the end have more than they need. And they could have done another vacation, or they could have allowed themselves maybe that addition to the house, or maybe that extra vacation, second home, those types of things, that it allows an advisor to step into that type of relationship when you think bigger than the portfolio or the sale that you had.
Right. And, so if they do overshoot their goals, and we'll see that a lot. I mean, maybe they created a 7-figure estate and they're meeting their needs. A lot of times I do a lot of check-ins. Are there things they're missing out? Are there things they want to do? What do they want their legacy to be? How would they like that to go? Maybe I sort of thought of this. Did you see the movie Ford versus Ferrari?
Oh, yeah.
So I thought of this scene. Do you remember the scene where the guy, he's in the race, the driver, and he just has this enormous lead, right? Yep. And then the team makes him slow down, but he's so adrenaline driven and goal accomplished, and he's so far ahead of it. And then he realized he could just back off and cruise. Not to say you should cruise towards the end, but he was so far ahead of his goal, it just never occurred to him. So sometimes we might see in an analogous way somebody. So let's take a step back. How can that, if you've been more successful, how can, what do you want to occur now that that's there? I had a woman, I referred to her on the podcast several months back, who was introduced to me about a year ago, started working with her. I made reference to the fact that she's a millionaire, and she sort of sheepishly said, I'm not a millionaire. That's not me. I'm not that. And I'm like, I'm looking at your accounts here, and I see 7 figures. And she was like, oh my goodness, you're right. I don't even see myself in that light, because she's the Millionaire Next Door. The theme is the overnight 25-year success story. So I've seen people go from a few $100,000, and now that it's bigger than they thought. They'll need it too, by the way, in most cases, because of inflation.
They're still the kid that's pinching pennies, right? I mean, they never realize they have that.
Yeah. Yeah, yep. Or the Depression era person who, or I didn't grow up with a lot. I still look at what's on the menu, and, I'm going to get what I want, but sometimes, hey, this entree is $5 less. And I literally think about it. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it just goes back to, I see my son in college right now. So, when they move away and they become aware that going out is so expensive just for a meal. So
yes, I have a saying for that.
Inflation's real.
I have a saying for that, for the clients that are the $1 million plus, and they're worried about these $100 expenses here or there. I say, if feel free to be the stressed out multimillionaire that's afraid they're going to go broke, but I'm not joining you on that. You're supposed to enjoy this. That's why you saved it for later, and later's now. Yeah. And so and everybody is relearning the lesson, I think, that they forgot over the last couple of years, that you actually have to fight inflation before it shows up. But if you've been successful with that, then you can enjoy that meal, even though it costs more than you thought. Right.
Right. Or just the freedom to not worry. Look, your investments are working for you. This isn't going to be the catastrophic event that breaks you. Or go to the mechanic. Right. I took my daughter's 18. She took her car. She's, we're trying to get her to be independent and make some money. But, a little trip to that, because her check engine light, and it's $550. And I'm trying to say that's why you have a job, because this stuff comes up. And we're going to cover some of it, but
I like to say the financial umbilical cord is never cut.
It's never cut. Yeah. Yeah. I just read a funny piece yesterday, but it's factual. Yesterday was Halloween as we record this. So it's November 1st. They were talking about inflation in candy. I guess candy inflation is huge. And what did they say? A 2 to 5 pound bag of candy is now running $20 to $50, which is more than 4 pounds of ground beef. And candy inflation is running at over 13%. I mean, I don't eat a lot of that.
Well, and the other thing they do is they, and maybe not so much in the bags of candy, but definitely in cereal and potato chips, is they just put less in the box in the bag. So you're buying the same, there's no inflation. It's the same cost for this box until you open up the box and it's half full of air. When I was a kid, you open up the box, it was full of cereal.
Right. Yeah, I know. And they literally have, experts who they know how to like shrink the size of the box, but visually you can't tell.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just less volume. That's called inflation, folks, if you're getting 20% less. So, that's a big, big factor that not everyone, it obviously came into the spotlight in a big way.
Yep.
In the last year and a half, and everybody noticed it in a giant way. I feel bad for the general population who has these cost increases. I feel bad for all of us, but most of our clients can weather that. It's impactful, but other folks, it's going to break. I see the price of gas, we're in California, and it's just, so we're trying to work against that. I'm at just another thing. I'm dating myself, but I went to University of California school and it was $400 a quarter. My son's going to one now and it's $33,000 a year. So
you can't even get books for $400 a quarter now.
Yeah. And apparently like a pickup truck, an F-150 is running like $85,000. So, that's called inflation. And that's a big, big thing we work towards. So, but keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. I think most people don't understand. And I think that's also part of this, the message to get out there is most people don't understand, historically speaking, the way you beat inflation. And I think the investments in the markets and companies and stocks, I get such a bad rap in general in the media and in the marketplace. And I think partially because most people don't have them. So therefore, because I don't have them, they have to be bad. So that way I don't have to feel bad that I don't have them. I say all the time that any company wants to produce a product or service that people want. They need to produce enough revenue to offset their cost, especially their cost of debt. So if interest rates go up, their cost of debt goes up there. It makes it harder to get that profit. But they want to bring that profit home to their shareholders and preferably make more. And so, the way you offset the fact that toothpaste costs more is you own a company that produces toothpaste, and then you can participate in those profits. And it effectively, it's exchanging money, which is units of a currency, into some other type of unit with the hope that those units appreciate more in value. And then when you need more of that actual money unit, you can sell some of those shares, right? And not enough people realize that that's the only way you're going to be able to fight inflation. It's the only way you're going to be able to retire. Greenspan said, I think it was 2003 or 4, who was the chairman of the Federal Reserve at the time, a quote, something to the effect of the future, we've made promises as a country to future generations we're not going to be able to fulfill, and you're on your own, which is part of freedom, right? You like the freedom of the United States. It also means you have the freedom to choose, and you're going to be on your own. And most people don't do enough to set aside enough to fund their retirement. I have a set of clients, and actually they're extended family members, and I'm dumbfounded because they have if they have 6 kids, they have 10, and one of them doesn't work. She's home with the kiddos, and one of them has a very, I think he was making, if he was making 50, he was making $60,000. It was not a lot of money. But before they turned 30, they had their house paid for. They showed up to start $100,000 of investment account. They have money saved for retirement. And I was just like, how did you do this? And they went into, we're up here in Wisconsin. It gets cold half the year. And they started rattling off the different ways. Coupons. They drive their cars till they're dead. They live in a very modest little home. They turn the heat down to 60 because it turns out if you have enough blankets, you can stay warm. And they just make it work. And I think too many people are buying into the bigger, better, more, got to have the new thing, spend the money. And I read recently the average $100,000 income, the person making $100,000 in the country on average is living paycheck to paycheck. And it's just like that. There's some choice to that. And again, you can only help the people that want to be helped. And it's our role as advisors to try and help those save that don't know how, and help our clients that have this wealth, help teach their kids how to start stewarding that wealth. So they're going to receive it at some point. This all goes back to the joy of being the financial advisor is the relationship you get to have with the people to try and help them be their best selves with what they have. And it has so little to do with what the industry puts the focus on of the money and the investment and how we're going to try and outperform whatever we're going to outperform, when really that's not what the clients are looking for.
Right. And honestly, like you've done this for a long time, like I have, it's not, unless you're making tons of money, it's not that outperformance. It's probably going to be some of those frugal things, those disciplinary factors, the folks you mentioned in Wisconsin living off 50K. I mean, I remember starting my first job when they gave us like a retirement plan that we could contribute to, and then seeing it grow through, and we put I put away a huge chunk of my paycheck towards that, thinking, hey, I'm in my early 20s. What if they already take all this stuff off the top, but that grew to be a pretty nice number. But I remember thinking, if you just let that power of compound interest go, conversely, if you're in your 20s and 30s and you're spending everything, and granted, it's tough right now, because I don't know what I would do if I was coming out of college and had to get an apartment or something now. It's just mind blowing, right? But keeping debt down, just avoiding, saying no, living with discipline, there's really no get rich quick type thing. And it just doesn't work. And it doesn't really bring happiness or satisfaction. So, the Millionaire Next Door thematically, that overnight, is a lot of that sort of just accumulated frugality or living within your means and working intelligently, but then letting decades and decades go by. And then it's that snowball that starts, but if it keeps going down the mountain, it's going to accumulate. And then sometimes we see them reach this critical mass. Now we can scale back on risk. So we can say, go spend some, go do this, go live your life. Because of all those years, that's satisfying. That doesn't sound, what's the word, sexy or, whatever. It works. Yeah.
And I'm sure you did it too. And I remember when I got started and had my first investment and saw the interest compound and saw the dividends reinvest, and all of a sudden it starts growing wealth. There's a saying, money makes money, but the money makes more, right? And so it's like that got exciting too, just like watching, write down your debt and write down how much every payment starts knocking it down. You see the progress, which makes you committed. And unfortunately, too many people are not doing that. They're trying to get rich quick and play the lottery and hopefully make up for all the years that they didn't set things aside. And for those of you that are listening, you want to get started somewhere in the accumulation phase of life. Take half of every pay raise you have and save it. Take half of every pay raise you have and try and fund that retirement plan, get that match, set that aside, because you still have half of it coming to you that allows you to go do more. But, just living in, it's amazing just trying to tell people to live within their means, and yet most people don't. Ironically, on that complete flip side of that, for our clients that have accumulated this money and now they're in retirement and they tell me, I don't need any of it. I still like to say, I tell clients, here, I'm going to send you this $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 a month, depending on their lifestyle or where they're at. And we're going to send it to your bank account at the end of the year. If I'm sending you $2,000 a month and you've accumulated $24,000, it means you didn't need it. So send it back to me. I'll send it to you again in case next year you need it. But the too many clients don't take anything in. They pretend like that's not my money. It's with Robert. I'm not going to touch it. And it's like, well, no, that's not why you saved it. But because of their mental state, it's like if you don't put it in their bank account, they don't think it's theirs. And so we've tried to break down even those stereotypes to avoid the regret later on when all of a sudden they'll tell us what they wish they would have done with it. Or they sit there and go, it's just for the kids, or it's black ink on white paper. And so it's this both end of trying to help people learn how to save, and then the joy of trying to help them once they've done that and had the success in that. How can you enjoy the fruit that can give you to make that life better?
Yeah, there's so many aspects. I do hear that I don't need it. I've accumulated this. Life's been, it's been a struggle, but it's been good. Then it might be going deeper. Well, how do you want to direct that? What would you've created a legacy. This is the result of all those nights you kept the heat at 60 degrees and probably a little colder, and you put on an extra blanket and you made these sacrifices. What do you want that to come of, and helping them achieve that? And it's really, that's a testament to all their hard work, all their legacy. We have folks that probably listening in their 20s, just getting started. How do I get there? Well, hopefully we've shed a little light and given some insight into how that's done. It always seems easier looking back, right?
Yep.
We're looking back on this, but so, even I had the pleasure of helping my son. Had opened up a Roth IRA with some stuff from McCall. He did it all on his own, looked at some Vanguard stuff, gave him some guidance, came to me one day, hey, Dad, can you give me a little insight, because this is what you do for a living? And then I He was pretty advanced. It was pretty cool to see him do that. But we really enjoy that. And clients, I've had their children come in, or, they're welcome to come in and get some thoughts and advice. But it's just a lot of what we do is very much of a sounding board. We just give them sound advice. That permission you talk about. If they are spending $5,000, sometimes they just want to run it by someone who really understands them and says, no, that's rational, that makes sense. Or it might be, this is really kind of a silly decision, but I mean, if you want to do it, it's not going to kill you. I remember years back, I had a client who, really nice gentleman, he had like a terminal diagnosis. I work with his adult son now. That's been going on 20 years. But I remember him, they didn't really have that much, but he was terminal. And then he goes in and he buys this Jaguar. At the time it was like 75. It was like a big deal for him, from his net worth. And I remember thinking, oh man, that's a really silly purchase. And I guess, he told me, I'm going, I just wanted to drive. I always wanted to do that. He did it. It wasn't a smart, the son later ended up selling it, because it wasn't his style at a big discount. So, but what are you going to do? You're not going to deny him his dignity. And, here he is. It made an impact. So we've seen a lot of situations. We're just here as sounding boards to give people good thoughts, whether that means save some more or go spend it, go do these things, get some joy. If you like to gift out or want to help some students, or maybe you can make a younger person's life a whole lot easier. The money will help with that. Life's not the easiest thing going on out there. There's a lot of challenges, but some money helps. It does buy some freedom and some independence and some choice. I think that's a lot of what we're striving at as well. I'm sensing from you. So it's awesome having this discussion and just collaborating. And what else would you like to share as we start to close up? And I know you have a book, and you're welcome to share how people can get that, or any big points, salient points.
So Total Relationship, you can find it on Amazon. It went live here a couple days ago. And again, it's talking into trying to help the individual realize what a role an advisor can bring that's different from, I think, what the stereotype is. And it's also written to try and help the financial advisor step out of the stereotype that most of them are in, to maybe find a new enlightenment about what the joy of having a total relationship with a client can really be.
That's awesome. That sounds great. So that's out there. You were kind enough to send me a copy, The Total Relationship. So I just got it last couple of days. I will go through that. I know there's a lot of questions, but you've spent years doing this. You have this. Maybe everyone doesn't qualify to be your client or mine, but here's a framework, and we're both reachable. So if we can help anyone at a certain point, it's more like we don't have to do this anymore, but we get to do it. So I'm sensing you're the same, but it's really about the quality of the engagements, making a difference for folks, setting aside some of the, just the stereotypes or the things the media or all this press drives people to think they have to have that for their happiness or success. Maybe yes, maybe no. We've seen we're dealing with the real live cases here. So, we've been doing it for a long time. So that's amazing, Tyson.
Appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to continuing to share this message. And it's a privilege to be on with somebody that's a like-minded. And kudos to you for the Pareto coaching and iron sharpening iron and trying to make each other better as advisors to then go help more people.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's just always working on yourself to make the process better for our clients, to be even better at what we do, to maybe hear things better. We've got all the technical acumen, but sometimes it's just listening or really understanding the people we work with and trying to hone in that process and always be a little bit better at it. And it takes some effort. But I was reflecting back the other day. Honestly, I don't know too many people that work as hard as I do at just always trying to improve myself. But I sense you may be one of those folks.
Well, it's not work when it's fun. It's not work when it's your passion, right? It's not work when it energizes you. And when you can see the difference you make.
Right. Yeah, it's rewarding for sure. Mm-hmm. So thanks for the good work you do and for coming on, and let's stay in touch. This is great. Really appreciate it,
Robert. Thank you.
Thanks, Tyson.
Thank you for listening to the Millionaire Next Door podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Signature Estate and Investment Advisors,
Signature Estate and Investment Advisors, LLC, SEIA, is an SEC registered investment advisor. However, such registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training, and no inference to the contrary should be made. Securities offered through Signature Estate Securities, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through SEIA LLC, 2121 Avenue of the Stars, Suite 1600, Los Angeles, California, 90067. Telephone number 310-712-2323. Securities through Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors, Inc. Form Wealth Advisors is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services. Raymond James and its advisors do not provide tax advice. Form Wealth Advisors is located at 431 Geneva National Avenue South, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, 53147. And you can reach the office at 262-686-3005.